going on, guys? I'm just watching on YouTube. One of the truckers' coach was talking about his input on the hours of service, and he doesn't feel that the hours of service need reformed at all. And if I take anything out of context that he said, I apologize ahead of time. I don't want to put words into his mouth, but it sounded like he was saying he doesn't want any kind of reform when it comes to the hours of service, but would rather see shippers and receivers and brokers more regulated. But it sounded to me like he thinks the shippers and receivers and brokers are the only ingredient to calling for the hours of service to be reformed, and they're not. You know, there's far more involved than just the shippers and the receivers, in my opinion. To address the his very statement about regulating the shippers and receivers, I understand where he's coming from. I see what he's saying. However, as a small government guy like myself, I can't really rightfully say that they should be regulated by the fist of government. I don't feel, a private company, private brokerages, I just don't think that they should be, regulated as far as, federally goes. Maybe the states can do something. I don't know, because, the states can, do what the states can do, things that the federal government can't on certain issues, and so maybe the states can, but I still don't necessarily agree with it, because for the most part they're private businesses. But also to address, he was talking about how they need to pay the drivers if they're for detention pay, and I'm all for that. I'm all for detention pay. I'm not for forcing it, but a driver, especially an owner-operator, can make his own contract, as the trucking exec has mentioned that they should do. He can make his own contract and send it to the broker, when they agree to accept the loads, and say, hey, these are my agreements, these are my stipulations. I want this much, after 2 hours of sitting at a receiver. Or shipper, I want this much detention pay. The broker can say yay or nay. They can accept it, or they can decide not to. That's up to them. I don't think they should be forced to accept it. However, I just don't. In the free market will allow the driver to go elsewhere, to take his business elsewhere, and that's kind of the beauty of it. Regulations just muddy the water. They just muddy things up when it's at a government level, in my opinion. But then you've also got to think about the company drivers. The company drivers, say a company driver makes 50 cents a mile, which today there's quite a few companies that pay 50 cents a mile. The average detention per hour for a company driver, at least in my experience, I've been on the road for 9 years, and in my experience, the average hourly rate that the driver receives for being detained is about $15 an hour. So say $15 an hour versus 50 cents a mile. Okay, if you're rolling for an hour, then at 60 miles an hour, then that's $30 that you're going to make in that 1 hour. So that's twice what you're going to make sitting. So even though you're getting paid to sit, it's still not anywhere near, what you're going to make if you're rolling. Therefore, if you can pause the clock, which I understand where he's coming from about, it seems like you're asking to work harder, but you're really not, because when you pause it, it gives you an opportunity to go back to the sleeper and get some sleep and relax. You're not working during that time. I mean, you can kind of, it's debatable, because even I would say, if you're on a shipper or a receiver's property, you're on the clock, in my opinion, as far as it doesn't feel like you're off duty. You know what I mean? Even if you are. That's why I have trouble getting a good night's sleep when I'm at a shipper or a receiver versus, a truck stop or somewhere that's not business related. However, you are able to go back to the sleeper and pause assuming you were able to reform the 14, it would allow you to go back to the sleeper and get some rest as they do whatever they have to do. And yes, even with detention pay, that does not guarantee that you're not going to be stuck there for 6 hours. Things happen, and it'd be nice to be able to resume your day afterwards, after you've had a good 4 or 5, 6 hour nap at the dock because they took too long to load you or unload you. It'd be nice to be able to resume your day and do what you have to do, so that way, maybe that means you're not going to be late. You can still make it on time to the next appointment. Whereas if it was eating into your 14, then you might have to stop and take your 10-hour beforehand, which will put you at your next appointment several hours late, which will throw your entire week off. That's the problem, in my opinion. And it's not just the shippers and receivers that, that warrant the ability to pause your 14. It's also everything else. It's traffic, it's breakdowns, it's things of that nature that you don't necessarily plan on. For example, say if you have a blowout, it's not a breakdown to the point that you're going to be out of service for a couple days because it's going to be in the shop getting, parts replaced. It's something that can be done on the side of the road. However, if you're on the side of the road for 3 hours waiting for a tow truck to get there, it'd be nice to be able to pause your clock and then resume once they've come out and replaced your tire. And there's also other scenarios that can cause you to have to stop and wait something out that is not shipper or receiver or broker involved. But also, let's not forget the other thing that it would help. One of the big problems with the 14-hour rule right now is say a driver gets tired for whatever reason, he can't pull over and take a nap without eating into his 14. And that's dangerous. That's a dangerous combination. If you feel you need to take a nap, but you can't, and you have to force yourself to drive the remaining 6 hours to run out your clock so that you can get to where you need to go the next day, is dangerous. So if you can pause your 14, then that allows you to that will allow you to take your nap and refresh yourself, and then get back on the road when you feel safe to do so without risking your appointment times. So those are the big things about the 14, in my opinion. As far as the 30 goes, I don't see how that can be mandated. For one, it shows a complete lack of trust in your fellow drivers when you think that they have to be told that they have to take a 30-minute break. It just shouldn't be that way. It really, what if I don't want to? What if it only takes me 10 minutes to eat my lunch? I don't want to have to sit for 30 minutes if I don't have to. It's, unless you extend the 14, so it's a 14-and-a-half-hour day instead of a 14-hour, but the 30 eats into your 40-hour clock. or your 14-hour clock. You know, and that's really all I have to say about the 30. It's just an arbitrary mandate, in my opinion. But then the 70, I don't see. The 70 makes no sense either, because I understand, you know, that some people are afraid that maybe your company, if you're a company driver, is going to try to take advantage of it and keep you out for weeks on end without going home. Okay, well, you need to grow some balls and tell your company that you need to go home. And if they don't like it and they fire you, well, there's going to be companies out there that are going to take advantage of the fact that they're crappy companies, and they're going to reward the drivers that come over to them, and they're going to give them the time off that they want, you know, when they want it. And it's going to weed out the bad companies through the free market. You don't need regulations, is what I'm saying. So allow the free market to do what it needs to do. But the 70 is, as far as there's something wrong with a law, in my opinion, that says, hey, you worked really hard 7 or 8 days ago, so because of that, you can't work today. How does that make any sense? It really, I mean, for the drivers that want to run, how does that make any sense? And also, you know, all of that in combination with an ELD, which I see nothing wrong with the ELD, which is why I think the hours of service are what need to be reformed, because the ELD only enforces the laws that are on the books, right? So there's no reason to blame the ELD because you're running illegally. There's no reason for it. The ELD just enforces it. But by reforming the laws, it will allow the ELD will be more flexible, so to speak. The 70 is just, it's another arbitrary law. I mean, I can get behind needing a 10-hour break, and I can get behind the 14. But I think the 14 needs to be, again, something you can pause. And it's not just the shippers and the receivers that, you know, make it, or that make me feel that way. It's everything as a whole in the industry. Everything that can cause you to get behind in your day is a reason to make the 14-hour clock possible. That's my opinion, and I want this to be something that's completely, you know, it's just a completely respectful disagreement. You know, I'm not trying to argue with anybody. It's a good thing to have these conversations, even if it's over YouTube like this. It's healthy. It's healthy to have people that disagree with each other. You know, with that, maybe compromises can come. You know, it's a very important topic as a truck driver. But I really don't see how. I don't understand how anybody can think that hours of service don't need to be reformed in any way. I just, you know, and if by me saying that the trucker's coach isn't saying anyway, maybe there's some way that he said that he thinks it can be reformed. So if that's the case, I apologize. Again, I don't want to put words into somebody's mouth. But I just don't see how people could suggest it shouldn't be reformed. It's not without its flaws, that's for sure. And the ELD only enforces what it's designed to enforce. But anyways, guys, that's just my opinion. I wanted to get that out there after watching Trucker Coach's video on the topic. And no, that's just what I got to say about it. So I'm gonna finish my drive, finish my drive to Cincinnati and get unloaded. And I think I'm going home after that. So we'll catch you all later. Bye.